Hello, everyone, and hope you're all doing well. It's so wonderful to hear powerful thoughts being shared every day through the SV devotionals, and I'm personally blessed. Back in SV, when we were in class 10th, we had the privilege of being part of the Sunday service at the Donauer Fellowship, and it was a wonderful experience. The place was so calm and so peaceful, and it was nice singing and listening to those old hymns. And the best part of the service was it was very short, and if I remember, it was only for about 30 to 40 minutes. And the service would always end with this prayer: Lord, help us to know you more clearly, follow you more nearly, and love you more dearly. And that prayer has stayed with me since then. And I pray that as we listen to these SV devotionals every day, that we would get to know God in a more intimate way. So before I begin, I would like to ask all of us a question. Have you received a miracle only to find yourself in a strange or difficult situation immediately after that? Anyone? Or even a high point or a mountaintop experience in life and suddenly everything changes? The Bible records several such instances, especially in the Old Testament, where the Israelites can be seen enjoying a series of victories followed by a big defeat for various reasons. And for our meditation this morning, we are going to look at one such incident from the New Testament and draw a couple of lessons from it. The passage is from the Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 6 and verse 45 to 52, where we read about Jesus walking on water. All of us know what happened prior to this. We read in the preceding verses one of the greatest miracles recorded in the Bible. Jesus feeding more than 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And the disciples witnessed a great miracle. But what happens next is really surprising. Verse 45 says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him. Surprising, isn't it? Now, what happens when we have a Bible study or a get together or even a birthday party at home? During the night or even the next day, we sit, enjoy the leftover food, and probably even talk about the wonderful time we had. Ideally, this should have happened. Later in the day, Jesus and the disciples could have sat, enjoyed the leftover food, and talked about the miracle and discussed various things. But we see the disciples find themselves in the middle of the lake, straining at the oars because the wind was against them. But Jesus steps in and says, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. It is I, the same Jesus who multiplied the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. It is I, the great I am. So here's lesson number 1. The miracle worker is greater than the miracle. There are times in life when we can get overwhelmed by the miracle or blessing, and our focus shifts from the miracle worker to the miracle. So God sometimes takes us into a different situation to remind us that our devotion to Him is of prime importance. Not that God doesn't want us to enjoy His blessing, but solely that we be focused and dependent on Him, and that we find joy in the miracle by delighting in the miracle worker. Every time God addressed the Israelites, He said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. A very strong emphasis on who He is above what He has done. The Bible says God made known His ways to Moses and His deeds to the people of Israel. That was the primary distinction between Moses and the people of Israel. While the people saw God's deeds, Moses saw the God behind the deeds, His purpose behind the deeds, and that made all the difference. So when we face a crisis situation after a high point in life, let's be reminded that every trial that God allows to come our way is lovingly guided and directed by Him in a purposeful way. Each trial is so designed by Him that it requires us to go back and remember something that God has already taught us about Himself. John makes it very clear in chapter 20 and verse 30 and 31. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of His disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in His name. Thus, the miracle should always point us to the miracle worker Jesus. Now, when Jesus came walking on the lake, the disciples thought he was a ghost. The wind was against them, they were straining at the oars, and in the midst of this helpless situation, they see an extraordinary thing, Jesus walking on water. So here's lesson number 2. When we are overwhelmed by our crisis, chances are, I repeat, chances are, we fail to understand God and His purposes when something extraordinary happens. Life can be hard at times. It could be a financial circumstance that is outside your control. It may be a report from your doctor that is disturbing you, or maybe a concern in the family. But whatever form the details may take, let's ask God to open our eyes to see Him at work. We can rest assured that God is in perfect control of the lives of those who have trusted in Him. We can take comfort in the fact that when such times come upon us, it's never because He has forgotten us, or because He is ignoring us, or because He has ceased to love us. In His sovereign wisdom, power and love, He occasionally allows such things to fall upon us, but they never come to us without His loving permission and sovereign control. He permits such times to fall upon us because they test us and train us and make us grow into the image of His Son Jesus. So what I want to leave with us this morning is that all our blessings and miracles would point us to Jesus, and that we would see His purposes behind that blessing and that miracle in our lives. We also need to be careful that we are not overwhelmed by our circumstances, so that we miss God and His purposes when He intervenes and steps into our circumstance in an extraordinary way. I hope this encourages you.